You, in some detail, walk through that if you wanted the World Economic Forum agenda, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. America will no longer be the world superpower. Western values will be brought to a breaking point. The Klaus Schwab Davos agenda, which really is the divide, it's Davos versus the citizen. How is it that these economic numbers actually satisfy the appetite and the demand of the world's ruling elite to get us closer to the WEF agenda? Can you explain how that works? Because it's rather confusing to some members of our audience.
No, it is, and that's understandable, right? And in some ways, it's so sinister that it's almost hard to believe that it's the reality, Charlie, but it is, in fact. And I would, by the way, point to this inflation is already not starting to stoke a lot of serious unrest and chaos in countries around the world, places like Sri Lanka. I think Sri Lanka is exhibit A of what the World Economic Forum Green New Deal agenda can do to a country and do to it relatively quickly. When you let Greta Thunberg effectively become your Minister of Energy, a snotty Swedish teenager who scolds you into ignoring natural resources, which of course are critical to powering any economy. We see the same thing happening in Germany. We don't see the chaos yet, although who knows what will happen. But in Germany, electricity prices, Charlie, just this year, they are 7-fold higher than where they started the year. Electricity is becoming, believe it or not, a luxury item in the country of Germany because of these policies, which you're very right. They do emanate from the globalists around the world, whether you're talking about the World Economic Forum folks like Klaus Schwab or the multinational CEOs. One thing I would also point out, when it comes to inflation, it's extremely harmful for all middle-income people, all lower-income people. There are some firms, though, and upper-income people who actually benefit from inflation if they are the producers of these resources that are massively galloping higher in price. So as a rule, it crushes regular working-class people. It crushes small business. But there are select big businesses, global businesses, which actually welcome inflation. And that's the sad reality. But I think the most important thing, Charlie, is that what we see right now, and we see it here in the United States, we see it in an even worse example in Europe, is prioritizing an agenda, a radical agenda, over practicality, particularly when it comes to energy. The United States, thank goodness, we are just blessed by the Almighty with with oceans of energy literally under our feet. The ability to not just be energy independent, but to be, in fact, energy dominant. We are Saudi America if we choose to be. Under Donald Trump's leadership, we were choosing that path, and we were producing endless amounts almost of dependable, affordable domestic energy. What did Biden do when he took office? Well, he followed the lead of the WEF. He followed the lead of the UN, of the globalists, and he started to attack American energy, to attack pipelines, to attack permitting and drilling. And unfortunately, he was quite successful. And that was really the first spark that started this inflation conflagration. But he then went further and said, we're going to pour so much spending, so much exorbitant borrowing and spending onto this economy, which did not need it. There was not a need for capital. The economy was actually recovering very, very well. Donald Trump's handoff to Joe Biden was actually spectacular. It was really the Trump boom 2.0, the recovery out of the 2020 doldrums was fully commencing, especially in the freedom jurisdictions, places like Florida that were being reasonable about the virus. So he was handed a lot of upward momentum in the economy. No need for him to engage in a multi-trillion-dollar binge of borrowing and spending. But when you combine that spending binge and borrowing binge with a war on American energy, you created a perfect storm for inflation. And that inflation, of course, continues to explode. And, Charlie, I think it's also important to note for the audience out there, I've encouraged them, take notes on who told you that this was transitory, right? We heard that endlessly from Biden, and you might say, well, of course he's a liar. But a lot of other people and a lot of other institutions that you might have some trust for, that you might have at least believed in the past, like the Federal Reserve, they told us time and again, this is transitory. Jerome Powell, the man whose principal job is to try to watch for exactly this phenomenon, to try to stop inflation from taking root in the United States. A man with an army of PhDs, with ostensibly the best knowledge of anyone in the country about what's happening in the economy. He either is totally incompetent or he's a bald-faced liar, because he told us many, many times that this was transitory last year and then it was going to go away. And perhaps it's a combination of both. He's dishonest and he's incompetent. But regardless, the reality for regular Americans is really terrible. Let me give you a few other stats, because again, I think the devil's in the details. I mentioned groceries, gasoline, and utilities. Here are some other items and just how fast they are growing on a year-over-year basis. Health insurance. Now, supposedly the Dems are the ones who bring us affordable health care. Health insurance up 17% year over year. New vehicles up 11%. Airline tickets, if you're lucky enough to have your plane take off, which doesn't happen that often these days, airline tickets up 34%. In the morning, you like your bacon, up 12%. I know I need my coffee. I need my cafefe very first thing in the morning. I'm a Colombian. This one really hurts me. Coffee, up 16% year over year. And by the way, I want to mention there regarding coffee, because of course the corporate media complies with the White House in this ridiculous canard of an excuse that it's a Putin price hike. Well, Charlie, last time I looked, we don't get any coffee from Russia nor from Ukraine, right? That has nothing to do with the war over there in the Black Sea that I believe should be a regional struggle and really very unimportant to the United States if we would just stop escalating it. But my point is, coffee prices aren't rising because of what's happening in the Black Sea. Coffee prices are up 16% year over year because of an inflationary spiral that we have been put into through terrible economic mismanagement from both the Fed as well as from the fiscal side, the Congress. And I would say, by the way, Republicans are complicit there too. It's not just Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Mitch McConnell has played ball and enabled all of this Biden nonsense as well. And he shares blame. Biden gets the load of the blame, but I think there are establishment Republicans who share blame for this economic misery. And it really is misery for regular folks right now, Charlie.